He's perfect for children's parties, my mother-in-law declared, her signature know-it-all smile firmly in place as she led my retired police horse, Thunder, toward her extravagant backyard event. Sunlight caught on her gaudy jewelry as she tugged at his reins like he was some obedient carnival pony. I stood frozen at the edge of her manicured lawn. "Patricia, stop." "Oh, Amanda, don't be so dramatic," she scoffed. "He's just a pony." Just a pony. Right, because a highly trained former riot control horse, built for crowd dispersal, was totally the same as a petting zoo pony. I clenched my fists as I took in the chaotic scene. Patricia had transformed her backyard into a carnival-themed nightmare. Balloon arches, a bounce house, and dozens of sugar-hiked children tearing through the grass while their parents sipped champagne. And in the middle of it all, she was about to turn Thunder into her latest party attraction. "Thunder isn't trained for this," I said, forcing my voice to stay even. "He's a retired police horse with specialized commands. This isn't safe." Patricia waved a dismissive hand, diamonds flashing. "Oh, please. I grew up around horses, remember? My father owned a stable." She turned back to Thunder, muttering, "Honestly, Amanda, he's been lazing around your pasture for months. It's time he earned his keep." Earn his keep. As if 12 years of service, of facing down riots, patrolling tense crowds, and keeping officers safe, meant nothing. "Mom, maybe listen to Amanda," Mark said from behind me, his tone cautious. Patricia shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't be ridiculous, dear. Your wife is overreacting." Then, in a sing-song voice that made my teeth ache, she called to the kids, "Who wants to be the first to ride the pony?" I stepped forward. "Patricia, stop." Thunder responds to specific commands, if you say the wrong word. "Oh, enough," she snapped. "I've already promised pony rides and I am not letting you ruin this party." My blood boiled, but before I could react, she clapped her hands and barked out, "Forward, march." My stomach dropped. That wasn't a casual command. That was a riot control cue. Thunder, ever the professional, did exactly what he'd been trained to do. He squared his stance, lifted his head, and launched into a powerful high-stepping march meant to clear crowds. The kids squealed in delight, thinking it was part of the show, but Patricia staggered backward, her designer heels sinking into the grass. "Stop! Whoa, halt!" she shrieked, throwing out every horse-related word she could think of. But Thunder didn't answer to generic cues. He had his training, and panic screeching wasn't part of it. I should have stepped in immediately, but I took a moment to savor the scene. Thunder expertly dismantling Patricia's perfect party as he plowed through balloon displays and sent expensive floral arrangements flying. "Amanda!" Patricia shrieked, her carefully coiffed hair beginning to unravel. And then, in a stroke of truly spectacular bad judgment, she shouted, "Charge!" I barely had time to groan before Thunder reacted. That command wasn't for show. He knew it as an order for serious crowd control. His muscles tense, and he surged forward, heading straight for Patricia's prized rose garden. The moment was almost cinematic. $1,000 worth of pristine, award-winning roses, no match for a police-trained horse in full tactical mode. "No, no, no," Patricia wailed as Thunder did his job with military precision, clearing the area with methodical efficiency. I finally stepped in, giving the correct stand-down command. Instantly, Thunder stopped, ears flicking toward me, standing tall amidst the carnage. Not a single hair out of place. I took his reins and looked at Patricia, whose face had gone through at least 3 shades of horror. "That," I said calmly, "is why you don't give random commands to a police horse." Around us, parents were gathering their children. The party was officially over. Patricia stood speechless, eyes darting between the ruined decorations, the trampled roses, and her shattered authority. Mark cleared his throat, valiantly suppressing a smile. "So, should we head home?" "Good idea," I said, leading Thunder toward the trailer. Behind us, Patricia was already spinning the story to her remaining guests. "Well, how was I supposed to know he'd react that way? Amanda should have warned me." I smirked. Oh, she'd been warned, she just hadn't listened. As I loaded Thunder into the trailer, I patted his neck. "Good boy," I murmured. Sometimes karma just has 4 legs and a perfect sense of timing. The aftermath of Thunder's performance at Patricia's party was exactly what you'd expect. Explosive. By the time we got home, my phone was buzzing nonstop with messages from family members. Patricia had already launched her campaign of victimhood, painting herself as the poor, well-meaning grandmother who had been attacked by my dangerous animal. Unbelievable. I turned my phone to show Mark where his cousin had sent a screenshot of Patricia's latest social media post. There she was, posed dramatically beside her ruined roses, writing about how she'd survived a terrifying encounter with an unstable police horse. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. You know how Mom gets when things don't go her way. Remember what happened when we didn't use her wedding planner? Oh, I remembered. Patricia had spent months warning everyone that our wedding would be a disaster. When it turned out perfect, she called it beginner's luck. Later, as I was checking Thunder over in the paddock, Patricia's car screeched into our driveway. She climbed out like a hurricane wrapped in designer fabric, waving her phone. Do you have any idea what this has cost me? She shrieked, wobbling across the grass in heels entirely unsuited for the terrain. The garden club is saying I endangered children. My reputation is ruined. I kept brushing Thunder, who remained utterly indifferent to her dramatics. I warned you, Patricia. Repeatedly, giving him commands was a bad idea. Well, you should have warned me better, she snapped. Then, with a sharp glare, she added, and now I hear you're some kind of police horse expert. Since when? I turned to face her, brush still in hand. Since I spent 7 years as a mounted officer, I said flatly. You'd know that if you ever asked about my career instead of dismissing it as my horse phase. That stopped her. Patricia had always trivialized my job, telling anyone who listened that I was playing around with horses until I settled down to give Mark children. That's beside the point, she sputtered. That horse is dangerous and needs to be dealt with. I've already called animal control. A chill ran down my spine. You did what? They'll be here tomorrow, she said, a triumphant smirk forming. Let's see what the experts say about keeping a police horse in a residential area. I stepped closer, my voice low and controlled. Thunder has all his certifications and retirement paperwork. He's legally registered with a spotless record, but you know what isn't legal? Giving unauthorized commands to a trained law enforcement animal. Patricia scoffed. He's retired. That doesn't count. He still holds an active training certification. I countered. Which means what you did today could be considered interference with a law enforcement animal. Would you like me to call my former surgeon and discuss the legal implications? Patricia's face paled. She hadn't expected me to push back. I usually tried to keep the peace for Mark's sake. But this wasn't about family politics. This was about Thunder. You're bluffing, she said, but the waver in her voice gave her away. I pulled out my phone. Sergeant Martinez would love to hear about this. She always had a soft spot for Thunder after he helped take down that drug ring in 2019. Remember that, buddy? I patted Thunder's neck, and he nickered softly. The story had made local headlines. Thunder and I had cornered a group of fleeing drug dealers in a crowded park, preventing injuries and securing the arrests. His training had been instrumental in keeping civilians safe. I didn't know, Patricia muttered. No, you didn't. Because you never asked, I said evenly. You were too busy trying to set me up with your friend's son who owns a real estate company. She fidgeted with her phone. You know what else you didn't know? I continued. Thunder has saved my life 3 times. Once during a riot when someone tried to pull me from the saddle. Once during a pursuit when he sensed an ambush before I did. And once when he stood guard over me after I was injured, keeping protesters away until backup arrived. For once, Patricia was silent. So go ahead. Call animal control, I said calmly. I have 12 years of service records and commendations to show them. What do you have? A ruined garden party and a history of ignoring explicit warnings. The only sound was Thunder's steady breathing and the rhythmic strokes of my brush against his coat. Finally, Patricia exhaled, her voice quieter than I ever heard it. I'll call them back. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. That would be wise, I said, not even looking up. She turned to leave but hesitated at the paddock gate. Why did you ever tell us? About the Dreb bust, about saving your life. I met her eyes. Because you never seemed interested in knowing who I really was. You were too busy trying to turn me into who you thought I should be. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Without another word, she climbed back into her car and drove away, kicking up dust in the evening light. A moment later, Mark emerged from the house, having wisely stayed out of the confrontation. Everything okay? I leaned against Thunder's solid warmth. Your mother just learned that her daughter-in-law has a spine, and that her grandkids are going to have a pretty cool story about their mom and a police horse. Mark smiled, stepping into the paddock. I'd say she learned a lot more than that. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the paddock, I realized he was right. Today had changed things, for better or worse. Patricia had finally seen a glimpse of the real me, not just Mark's wife, not just a future mother to her hypothetical grandchildren, but a woman with her own history, her own strength, and a partner who had always had my back. Thunder nudged my shoulder, his way of demanding a treat after a job well done. I pulled out an apple and held it out to him, smiling as he happily munched away. Patricia might never fully change, but at least now she knew who she was dealing with. And that was enough for me. 3 weeks after the garden party disaster, I came home from Thunder's vet appointment to find Patricia's car in our driveway. She stood by the paddock fence, surprisingly dressed in jeans and flats, practically casual by her standards. I've been doing some research, she said as I led Thunder from the trailer. No greeting, no small talk, classic Patricia. About mounted police units. I said nothing, giving Thunder his head so he could graze while she continued. I had no idea, she admitted, her gaze fixed on him. The training, the bond between officer and horse, the risks you both took. She hesitated, then pulled a thick folder from her bag. Did you know Thunder's drug bust was featured in a police training manual? I did, I said simply. That case was used to train new recruits for years. She nodded, then handed me the folder. I found these in the newspaper archives, articles about you and Thunder. Her hands trembled slightly, including the one about the riot, the one where he saved your life. I flipped through the clippings, years of my career laid out in black and white. There we were, Thunder and me, directing parade traffic, patrolling downtown, accepting a commendation from the mayor. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Patricia exhaled, the words slow and deliberate. Because I was wrong. About you, about Thunder, about everything. Her voice was quieter than I ever heard it. I spent so much time trying to fit you into my idea of who Mark's wife should be that I never saw who you actually are. Thunder wandered closer, nosing toward her pocket, searching for treats. Patricia startled but didn't step back. I called your former sergeant, she admitted. She told me what you and Thunder accomplished. Said you were one of the most decorated teams in the unit's history. My eyebrows lifted. You called Sergeant Martinez? Patricia actually flushed. I needed to understand. And she had strong opinions about respecting retired police animals. I smirked, imagining that conversation. Martinez never held back. I also resigned from the garden club board. Patricia continued. They wanted me to file a formal complaint about Thunder. I told them to find someone else. Thunder nudged her pocket again. She glanced at me. Is it okay if I nodded. She held out an apple, fingers stiff at first, but Thunder took it gently, crunching contentedly. Patricia laughed, a real, unguarded sound. I'm going to restore the rose garden, she said, but I was thinking. Maybe we could add a plaque about Thunder's service. The garden club ladies might learn something about judging appearances. The offer stunned me into silence. Of all the things I expected from Patricia, this wasn't one of them. I like that, I finally said. And she hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. Maybe you could tell me more. About your time on the force. About Thunder. If you want to. I studied her. For the first time, I saw not the controlling, overbearing woman I'd clashed with for years, but someone genuinely trying to understand. Why don't you come inside? I said. I have old photos, stories, and Thunder's getting new shoes next week. You could come watch, see how police horses are trained. Patricia's eyes lit up. I'd like that. Very much. As we headed toward the house, Mark pulled into the driveway, pausing mid-step when he saw us together. Everything okay here? He asked, clearly bracing for drama. Your mother's learning about police horses, I said, starting with the time Thunder and I chased down a purse snatcher through the park. That was in the papers too, Patricia added, holding up her folder. Mark glanced between us, a slow smile forming. Well, he said this should be interesting. And it was. Patricia never stopped being Patricia. She still hosted extravagant parties and meddled in our lives. But something shifted. She started seeing me as more than Mark's wife, and Thunder as more than just a horse. The plaque in her restored rose garden became a neighborhood conversation piece. It read, "Dedicated to Thunder, retired police horse and hero." And beneath it, in smaller letters, "Never judge a book by its cover or a horse by its pasture. Not every victory is about winning. Sometimes it's about changing how someone sees the world. Thunder taught me that in our years of service, and now he taught Patricia too." As for those pony rides she planned, these days she preferred telling everyone about her daughter-in-law, the decorated mounted officer, and Thunder, the hero horse who'd rather trample roses than suffer fools. Some lessons, I suppose, are worth a few crushed flowers.